So here's some of the information that we have on our knowledge book page, where we have some different information about what we kind of are doing, and we'll kind of talk through this information. Other things that you may find useful are this post that I posted recently about the updates to the Public Library Survey statistics. And then we also have some sheets that kind of show the granular process that I go through to map all this information and such. So I will walk you through some of these things here. So basically each year, libraries are responsible to submit their responses for the Public Library Survey. For members' convenience, I run a number of the different queries for people. The first of which is the patron counts. So this is a snapshot of all of the patrons as of July 1st. It's basically taking the permission groups that Cardinal has and mapping them into the Public Library Survey categories. So one of the things to know about this is that we are doing a count of all patrons as of July 1st, and we're looking at patrons who are active and have an expiration date within the last 3 years. So for instance, when I ran them last year in July of 2024, we said everyone who has an expiration date greater than June 30th of 2021. So basically, in the Public Library Survey, there's two big categories, adults and juveniles. We also do record counts for the student access accounts as well. The other next one that we do is the collection counts, which covers these PLS categories. This is also a snapshot as of July 1st. I'll talk through what exactly we do to map all of these different collections into the Public Library Survey categories. There's kind of a whole process for that, but I'll get into that in a little bit. But these are the different categories that we run reports for at Cardinal. Then we get into the circulation counts, and that is basically from July 1st of the previous year up until June 30th of the current year. And again, all of these need to be mapped from what their circulation modifier is, what their shelving location is, that sort of thing, over into the Public Library Survey categories. So again, I'll get into that in just a little bit. Then we have what Public Library Survey refers to as ILLs, which for the numbers I run are the resource sharing numbers. We are counting basically all of the resource sharing transactions and then accounting for them where they're coming from and where they're going to. So depending on which part of that action your library was a part of, that's where that one transaction would show up at. This is one of the instances that kind of highlights that the numbers that I am doing may be modified by you all once they are available in the Public Library Surveys tool. So if, for instance, you're also doing interlibrary loan transactions with other library systems outside of Cardinal, the numbers that I report are going to be just the numbers that are representing the resource sharing transactions that are happening with Cardinal. The other thing that we do is the summer reading stats, and so basically that is the transactions that happen for juvenile patrons between June 1st and August 31st. Those are numbers that we run pretty much on September 1st, so that's a little bit out of the normal process, but that's kind of the other PLS-related thing that we do. So one of the other things that I'll mention is as libraries are migrating in, we will run the numbers for the time period that they are part of Cardinal, and so it's important in migration processes to grab the statistics for the time period that the member library was not in Cardinal. You know, at the point of running these, you know, we can give an accurate patron count, an accurate collection count, but in the old ILS, there's going to be information about the circulations and potentially ILL numbers that will need to be recorded. So Yes, so basically there is this knowledge book page that kind of gives you that high level detail, and the mapping stuff I'll show you here in the actual Excel sheets here in a minute, just how that works. The other thing that I wanted to get into about this was what exactly is happening with the policy change. So basically, Evergreen has 3 tiers of information about materials and collections. There's a bibliographic record, which is a shared title that everyone in Cardinal shares. Then there is a call number record, which can have multiple items attached to it. That has a branch that it is associated with. And then there's also an item, which has a circulating library, which is sort of where the thing lives on the shelf. So when you are representing your collections and you're creating sort of a new call number, you assign it to a specific branch. You can then add items that are at that same branch, but you can also add items that are at other branches. So in all these cases, the items and the call numbers are owned by a specific org unit, by a branch at your library. So traditionally, before last year was the first year that we started sort of counting things by branches for collections and circulations. And prior to that, the reports that we'd had run, set up and run, were looking at just the call number level and saying how many items are attached to call numbers that are owned by this library system. When we were just interested in a count for a library system, that number was perfectly sufficient. So when we last year started reporting the PLS stats for member libraries, a few libraries reached out to us and said, "This doesn't quite make sense. How does this? Why are these numbers at this branch so low?" For instance, what we discovered is that basically, because we were looking at the higher level of the call number, some libraries will use that as sort of, they'll associate their call numbers with the main library and then maybe move their items, the circulating library, use that as a way to move things around between different branches. Another scenario where that may come into play is like a bookmobile. So you may have your local branch be the owner of the call number, and then for 3 months out of the year, you set the circulating library to be the bookmobile, and that way if that material checks out and comes back in, it stays on the bookmobile, and then maybe at the end of the summer or at the end of the season, you change it back to the main library in that town and put some other things on the bookmobile by changing their circulating library. So there can be disparities between what the circulating library is and what the owner of that call number that the item is attached to. So basically what we have done in this, what we realize is with this change to counting things by branches and for circulation and collections, we are going to represent where the thing actually is sitting rather than who owns the call number, because that seems to be a more accurate number. So let me show you a spreadsheet that kind of shows sort of the impact of this and what this means for people. All right, so this is something that is available if you go to the Public Library Survey stats on the Basecamp group under Docs and Files. This is a count. What I did was basically looked at every library system and every branch and ran a count by how many things were owned by the call number, how many items had a specific call number value, and how many items had a specific circulating value, and then sort of ran counts of those things. So the biggest impact, Wayne, as we're mentioning, you all have the biggest difference between what your call number owners are and what the item owners are. Madison has subsequently changed a lot of their circulating library and call number branches to be more in sync. But there are some other libraries that also have, in the thousands of items. But for the most part, for most libraries, pretty much what the call number owner is what the circulating library is on the item. So this is just the total count of how many things would be counted differently with this change. If this is something that's helpful to have reports of what these things are, again, there may be very logical reasons for these things to be this way. But if it's helpful to I didn't know that this was the case, that we had some things where the call number was owned by one place and the circulating library of the item was the other, we can run some reports for you and get you that information. And if it's helpful to get a count of things by call number, for instance, rather than by circulating library, the number is going to add up to the same thing. It's just the dispersal of the materials is going to be different. So we can run those reports for you if that's helpful. But in general, we're going to start running it looking at the circulating library, because that's where the physical material sits on the shelf at the moment we're taking that count. But just wanted to bring everybody into that conversation. So before I proceed, let me see if there are any questions about that. So anybody have any questions about that change? Feel free to unmute or ask questions in the chat, whichever is. Okay. Not seeing any questions, so in that case, I will carry on. All right, so the next thing that I wanted to get into is what exactly we do to translate between the categories and information that we have in NC Cardinal and the information that is required for categorizing collections and circulation counts in the Public Library Survey. So that information, you can see the actual gritty, granular process of how that's done by looking in these spreadsheets here. So if, for instance, one of the things I'll show you in just a minute is how to run some of these raw numbers yourself. If you want to recreate that process or do monthly reporting or some of that sort of thing, these spreadsheets here have the process that we're using to go through the raw data, which has basically information about what is the branch that the materials are at, what is the shelving location, what is a circulation modifier, and how do we turn that into Public Library Survey categories. So I'm going to look at some of these. For instance, here, just looking at circulations, we start off with a raw count. Let me increase the size here because I know sharing my screen doesn't. Okay, so when we run these reports, and the reports that we have in the reporter generate things that are basically the circulating library system, the count of the items, the shelving location, and the circulation modifier. And so in order to make the translations of these to the Public Library Survey categories, the first thing that we do is we look at the circulation modifier. There are some instances where there are circulation modifiers where everything that is an audiobook goes to this category. Everything that is a video goes to this category. And if there, so you can see, for instance, here, this thing has a video of, or a circulation modifier video. which is going to be categorized as a circ video. There is also a shelf code, but if there is a circulation modifier category, that's what's going to win. In this case, they both match. Maybe there's some other instances where, yeah. So here's one. There is a circulation modifier of art print. That has a match in the circulation modifier of other print. The shelving location that this one lives at, which is audiobook, for some reason, would map as circulation, audio, but because there's a circ modifier, it maps as what that circ modifier is. So in all of these sheets where we're making these translations, there is a table that shows the translations. And so here, for instance, is the map that we use for circ modifiers. If it is a map, it's going to be categorized in circulation as a circulation other print. If it's a map in the collections, it's going to be mapped as other print. And so first we take these take precedence over the shelving locations. But if there is not a mapping there in the circ modifier, then we take what is the shelving location. So we have gone through and basically categorized all of the shelving locations by whether they're young adult, juvenile, fiction, nonfiction, adult, that sort of thing. And in some cases, magazines become periodicals or serials, that sort of thing. Every year when we run these numbers, we have to look at, are there new categories or new shelving locations that we didn't represent previously that we have to map. This is one of the reasons why we try to include fiction and nonfiction in all of the shelving location names that we use in Cardinal, because we're trying to make it clear whether or not something is fiction or nonfiction for a public library survey. Now, sometimes what we will do, we will just dump them into one of the adult fiction or nonfiction categories, and so that's the best we can do without more information about whether or not the thing is fiction or nonfiction. So I would say that this shelving location map is something that is up for scrutiny. I've had folks reach out to me before and say, hey, it's actually probably more valid to have this be mapped to this. So if you see something here that doesn't quite seem logical, reach out. I'm happy to make corrections and updates as necessary, but also wanted to put this out there so that people can at least understand what these translations are. So again, what we're doing is we're basically saying if there's a circ modifier, then we'll use that. Otherwise, we will have a mapping for all the shelving locations, and the circ modifier wins. Otherwise, we use a shelving location. We take the outcome and we use that as our public library survey category, giving us our branch, our category, and our count. So from there, run that into a pivot table, and this pivot table basically adds things up by the categories, as you can see here, but since this is a dynamic table, I then take that and put it into a more static form. And this is where we can do any final translations or that sort of thing. So one of the things that we need to do, we need to add the for instance, here in the circulation spreadsheet, we need to add the non-catalog types. So these are like paperback books and that sort of thing. We need to add the non-catalog types into adult fiction. And so the number that we start off with here, coming out of the database, we add those non-catalog types to get our final number for adult fiction. That's the main unique translation that we do for circulations. One of the things we came across this year is that we have traditionally just been using the paperback, the Cardinal-wide paperback category, and I realize that there are non-catalog types in use by other libraries that we need to account for. So that's one of the updates we'll make this year, and I'll make a post about that. So you can see here, for instance, here's what the counts were for the different branches for the non-catalog types. So that, for example, is circulations. I'll also pull up the collections just to kind of show you that. The main difference in the collections, we're basically going through that same process, and these, again, these sheets are all here for you to look at if you want to go back and refer to them. So we're doing the same thing. We're basically taking what is the branch, the count, the shelving location, the circ modifier. If there's a circ modifier, it wins. Otherwise, we use the shelving location. That gives us our count per the categories. We put that into a pivot table to get a sum, and we end up with our table. The one thing that we do differently here is with our subscriptions. So the way that the subscriptions were counting was the items, and so we have to go and actually look at the title level information for periodicals, so that we're not counting the 12 issues you got this year of each of your thing. Each magazine, for instance, we're counting the 8 magazines. For instance, here, the number of subscriptions that you have. So that's the one kind of thing that you may have difficulty getting in the raw data. But again, if you look in the spreadsheet, we've got our circ modifier mapping, and we have our shelving location modifier mapping. And that gives us our results here. So that's basically the process that we use to translate this information from the information that we have in Cardinal with the shelving location and the circulation modifiers, and then turn that into information that is in the format and the structure that's needed for the public library survey. Each of those 4 spreadsheets that is shown here, so this 01, 02, 03, 04, all of those end up into this NC Cardinal Public Library Survey spreadsheet. So basically, we have our interlibrary loans, we have our circulations, we have our users, we have our collections, and then we bring that all into our category that's used for data input. And you can see here the codes and how they translate into the different categories. So again, things that are done on a branch level are the collections and the circulations. And then the things that are done on the system level are the patron counts and the resource sharing. Saw a question there just a moment ago. Let's see. Are the templates used in a specific folder? Are the templates used in a specific folder in the reports module? Yes. Good question. And that is where we are going next. So if you want to run these numbers yourself, the spreadsheets here will show you how the translation happens, but the way to get the raw data is in the reporter. So you probably are familiar with the shared templates in the reporter. If you go to admin, this is where we have all of our centralized report templates, but we also have our PLS reports. And so these are the different reports that will get you the raw data that we use in those first columns, with basically the branch, the circulation modifier, the shelving location, and the count of items. So we have one for owning library, we have one for system, we have a list of the branches back here. We have the non-catalog item circulations, registered users, resource sharing, and the shelving locations list. So these reports will allow you, again, if you're going to use these, the first thing to do, if you're going to, for instance, look at your registered users, or let me actually do just shelving locations. The first thing to do here is to clone the template. That way you have your own copy of it, and you can alter it to have the criteria that you want to have. If, for instance, you want to limit to your own library, or play around with the different time periods, if you want to just show active users or something like that, then you can do that here. And then once you have your once you have the report in your own, then you can actually run the report, or you can make modifications or that sort of thing. So basically, these things all live in the reporter under shared folders, admin, and then PLS reports folder right here. And if you run these and have any difficulties, feel free to reach out and send us a message, and we're happy to help you with that sort of thing. Let's see here. That's pretty much what I wanted to cover today. Basically, that's the process that we're going to do starting July 1st. We try to do this as quickly as possible in order to have an accurate snapshot as of July 1st, because the patrons and the collections, we want to make sure that we're not hitting a moving target. We get the numbers grabbed there on July 1st. Then once I sort of put together the numbers for Cardinal libraries, I hand that off to Amanda, and then Amanda puts that into the Public Library Survey dashboard, and I don't know a whole lot about what happens at that point. But Amanda, any other thoughts or suggestions or things that you want people to know about the numbers that we're running for Cardinal, and things they may need to know about entering data, altering data, that sort of thing?
Sure. Thanks, Benjamin. Yeah, so this year, there's really not a lot of changes with the annual report. As Benjamin mentioned, he will get me those files. I will pre-fill everything for NC Cardinal. And then really by offering the templates to the reports Benjamin runs and kind of going over the process, we just want to be very transparent about everything to help you kind of verify that pre-filled data, be able to ask questions if something looks a little bit off, or just be able to dig in a little bit deeper and understand the process, because your questions are always really helpful in helping us kind of refine this process and make sure everything is as accurate and consistent as possible. As consistent as we try to be, each library does things a little bit differently. So we kind of stumble upon these little areas where we might need to tweak something based on how something is handled locally. So your questions really are welcome and helpful. For the annual report overall, there really are no changes for this year in terms of the data elements. There's one small change that we're going to make just for clarity in the registered card area. So we're going to ask you not to include the student program cards in the juvenile count. And that just really was because for some libraries, they were including them, some were not. And so we're just trying to clean up that field and make it consistent. So the juvenile card data element will just be kind of standard traditional library cards, and then we will still ask for the student cards in a separate field. So all the data is still the same. We're still collecting it. We're just separating it out to make it clearer and more consistent. Other than that, there's no changes. We are adding some additional features in the reports module. We're going to add in some new filtering options. So you'll be, one of the filters will be consortium membership. So you'll be able to filter on NC Cardinal members if you want to run reports, just comparing your library system to other NC Cardinal members. We'll also include in there the other electronic consortia, NCDL and e-Ink. We are adding a peer group filter as well. So that's based off of the primary peer group using the Public Library Association's kind of guidelines for determining that. So just a few different things to make running reports a little bit easier. And then because this is the second year we have outlet data, we also are going to be able to bring back some of the printout and comparison options that we had in the past. So you might remember in years past, you could click the little print button and it would generate this nice PDF that showed this year's data compared to last year's data. We didn't have that last year because of the changes with the outlet level collection. So now that we do have 1 year of outlet level collection, we can bring back that comparison report. And so you'll see that added back in. In terms of other things that are coming up, I'm going to put a link to the documentation that is on our website for this year's report. The instruction manual is up, and we'll be adding some more documentation as well. And then there are also 2 training opportunities available. I'm going to put those in the chat as well. The first one is just a general overview of the annual report, the timelines, deadlines, kind of what we ask, some common issues that we see. So that's really great if you have new staff or staff that are going to be involved for the first time this year in reporting data. And then the second one is really just for the staff that will be inputting data into the online system, into LibPass. And so in that one, we'll be going over the features of LibPass and the different options you have when you're entering your data. So those are the 2 things that we have coming up. But if you would like to talk about anything specific to your library or have any questions, really do reach out in the meantime. We can always set up a virtual meeting to go over any questions you might have. And I think that's all I have, Benjamin.
Okay, thanks. I was trying to grab those links so I can add those to our knowledge book page as well. I think that might be helpful if people can get links to those. But yeah, that's sort of the process that we go through. Timeline, Amanda, what sort of timeline should people expect the information to be ready for them to review or modify?
So the survey will open on July 15th this year. You always have access to the LibPass platform, and so you can log in at any time and get to the reporting module. You can even look at last year's survey input screen. But we ask that you wait until the survey opens on July 15th to start looking and reviewing any of the pre-fill data for this year. So we will put updates for when the pre-fill data is in and ready for review on the homepage when you log in. So you'll see the updates there about what we have, what is still coming, so you'll know when to review that pre-fill data.
Other questions, other things that we can help with, explain, anything like that? Are there other things that you all would like to know about the Public Library Survey and the data that we collect? I am going to put a link to our knowledge book page. I also am going to put a link to the place within the Cardinal Directors Basecamp group where I have information about the Public Library Survey stats, so all of those spreadsheets. That is in the Directors group, so if you're not a part of that at the moment, you may need to talk to your director to get those files handed off to you. But that has the information about the impact of the counting, the individual sort of raw processes for translating the data and the summary sheet. And I think we'll probably just update those or add this year's once we kind of get through the process, if that's helpful for everyone. But the thing I would say is, don't refer to those as the source of information. That's more a how-to. The actual dashboard and such is a better place to go for the information. Not seeing any questions in the chat. You can also feel free to unmute if you have anything. Other than that, we will wrap it up and post this webinar for everyone to have a look at, so that if folks weren't able to attend, they can check out all this information afterwards. All right, not seeing anything. So yeah, we're always here to support you and help. And as you go through this process, or if you play around with any of those files or the reporter or any of those kind of things, if you encounter anything that raises questions for you, feel free to let us know. help@nccardinalsupport.org is a great way to get a hold of us. And we will give you all alerts and heads up as we kind of work through these things. And Amanda will also let you know once the information is ready for you to start perusing in the middle of July there. And we will go from there. Thanks everybody for joining us. Thanks Amanda for being here. Appreciate your help, and we will get some numbers for you soon.